Okay, so in chapter 7, we learn about the accusative case. The accusative case. We don't have an accusative case in English. And when you hear the word accusative, you might think of accusations and things like that. And it has nothing to do with this. The accusative case is used in Greek, though, most frequently for the direct object function. So if I have a verb that can take a direct object, that can affect the direct object, I'm going to put that direct object in the accusative case. Okay? Nominative case is used for when the noun is the subject of the verb. But we're going to give you some hints for translation. You'll learn 2 more noun rules. You'll learn about prepositions in this chapter and how to think about prepositions, as in you have a preposition itself, you have an object of the preposition, and together they form what's called a preposition phrase. We'll talk a little more about that. We'll talk about the predicate nominatives, which we've already talked about last chapter when I was overviewing some of the stuff. And then the matter of dependent clauses. So have a lot to cover here, and we'll see how far we can get. Let's start with English. Remember, Mounts always begins with some English grammar. A predicate nominative. When we have a verb of being, like Amy, we've described this as a copular verb. Some people call it an equitive verb. So I guess I'll go ahead and write those 2 terms down. So you can call them copular or equitive verbs. These sorts of verbs like to be, to become. They produce a situation when you have a sentence like them where you're not specifying what the verbal action does to someone, right? When I say he killed the man, killing is a verbal process that affects the man, right? That's what we call a direct object. And we're going to use the accusative case to mark that, as we'll learn here in this chapter. But the verb to be doesn't do anything. It's not indicating an action or an activity, right? It's more a situation, state. And in fact, what it's doing is it's predicating something about the subject. It's saying that the subject is, or if it's past tense, was some quality or some person, and that quality or person is not affected by a verbal activity. It's rather what the subject is. Okay? And when we have a copular verb like Amy, the thing that the subject is will be in the nominative case. We will often refer to the noun as a predicate nominative. And as I mentioned before, we will describe the adjective. If I say Mary is pretty, pretty is a predicate adjective. But those will be in the nominative case. In English, we would call that the subjective case, okay? And so he gives you this little example as a good grammar teacher would, and wants to make sure that you all know that you cannot say the teacher is me, okay? Because the word me is objective case. But when we say the teacher is something or someone, in English, that's supposed to be the subjective case, and you're supposed to say the teacher is I. Now, how many of you say that when you knock on the door? Someone says, who is it? Do you say, it's I? No. Come on. When you have any coffee snobs who do that out there? Do you say it's I? No. You wouldn't want your friends laughing at you, would you? Nobody says that anymore. And this is one of the things that if you ever do the linguistics course with me, I don't know if we'll do it next semester or next fall, but there are approaches to linguistics. One is called the descriptive approach, and one is called the prescriptive approach. And prescriptive linguistics says, here's how the grammar ought to be. And a prescriptive linguist would say, this is the right way, the teacher is I. Descriptive linguists, on the other hand, say, you know, as a linguist, my job is not to tell people how to speak, it's to describe how people are speaking. And so I'm merely describing the grammar of the language. And what it seems like is most linguists are descriptive, and they just want to describe language. And what seems to be the case here is that the use of me in a subjective sort of form with this kind of a sentence has become the norm in our language today. And I don't know if British people have done this, but Americans have definitely done this. And, you know, some people hate it, but it's just the way it is, I guess. And I wouldn't go around correcting people for this, but Mounts, I think, is happy to. So, anyhow.
What would the noun, what would teacher? What kind of case?
Because it's the subject, it would be subjective case in English, right? If English still had case markings for its nouns. And in Greek, it would be nominative case.
Okay, so we just have two nominative.
Exactly. You'd have two nominative case forms.
Okay.
Okay. Let's talk about prepositions here. So again, we're still just dealing with English, and we're trying to develop a good grammatical vocabulary for analyzing what we're going to analyze in Greek. So a preposition is a word that shows a relationship between two other words. So in some linguistics books, prepositions are referred to as relationals, okay? So nouns are called nominals, and prepositions are called relationals, because what they do is they do establish relationships between two words. So he gives us a sentence. The book is under the table. If I can highlight under here, he's got it in italics for you. But that's the preposition. And what that preposition is doing is it's establishing a relationship between the word book and the word table, right? And that relationship is a spatial relationship. Book and table are related to each other in a spatial way. That spatial relationship being underness. So he gives you other examples of prepositions, and you know these instinctively, right? On, over, with, before. And prepositions can be of all sorts. So his feet are on the table, that's spatial. The ball went over his head, that's spatial. John came with his disciples, that's spatial and associative, perhaps. John came, not God. John's not God. Which that reminds me of a story. Let me tell you a story real quickly. one of my friends that I did grad school with, he said that his son came up to him. His son was probably like 4 or 5 years old, and said, Dad, I am not sure that I believe that Jesus is God. He says, son, we've taught you from the Bible that Jesus is divine. Why are you doubting this? Well, the Bible tells us that God can't die, and Jesus died. So I don't think Jesus can be God. And my friend says, oh, I think I've got a little theologian on my hands here. This is amazing. He says, well, son, if you don't think Jesus is God, who do you think God is? And he said, Noah. What? Well, when the flood came and killed everybody, Noah didn't die. I think Noah's God. He's like, okay, we don't have a theologian yet. Got to fix this. That was amusing. Anyhow, John, not God. John came before Jesus. Now here, this is not spatial. In the preposition's not a spatial preposition, right? This is a temporal one. It signifies the timing, and that's why when he says what he says next here, just take it with a grain of salt. It's been said that a preposition is anything that a rabbit can do with its home. He can go in it, around it, and jump over it. Yes, if we're talking about spatial prepositions, right? You can go in it, over it, around it, under it, through it, and whatever. But of course, there are all sorts of other semantic categories for prepositions as well. So the temporal ones are things that rabbits can't do with their home. Now, the word following the preposition is called the object of the preposition. The object of the preposition. And when you put the two together, the preposition and the object of the preposition, then you have what is called a prepositional phrase. Okay? So in all of these examples, we have a preposition, and then I'll put in blue the object of the preposition, right? On something, over something, with something, before something. Whatever goes with that preposition is called the object of the preposition. Now, in English, we do have some constraints on what form the object of the preposition takes. English is not a case-marked language anymore, and so we've lost the case markings. But technically, in English, the objective case is used for those things that are the object of the preposition. But the word table is still the word table, whether it's the subject or the object of the preposition, right? The table is nice. Subject, he put it on the table. Objective case. But what about the pronouns? Remember, the pronouns do inflect for case. So I wouldn't say under he, right? Like he has here, under he. Rather, the book is under him. So we do have to use the objective form if there's one available in English. In Greek, what we're going to learn is that prepositions will be in a particular case when they're the object of a particular preposition. So we're going to learn the word ace. I think you may have seen it before.
Ace, yeah.
Ace means to or into, and it will take its object in the accusative case. And that's the case we're learning in this chapter, okay? So just be aware, when you have prepositions in Greek, as we start learning these, they will never be in the nominative case. They'll always be in one of the other cases. The other three main ones.
Will never be.
The object of the preposition will never be in the nominative case. Prepositions are not nouns,
Right.
so they won't have a case themselves, but they will cause their objects to be in a
They will
particular
always
case.
precede.
They will come before, yes. And that's why I can go ahead and just say this. The word preposition uses the word pre in preposition. We often think of prep, right? But the pre comes before position. What does position mean? Position means placement, right? The position is the placement of something. Pre means before. Prepositions come before the object of the preposition. This is true in English, and it's true in Greek. If you ever get to study some Asian languages, like Chinese or Korean, they put the preposition after the object of the preposition. So they're not technically prepositions in those languages, they're postpositions. Isn't that funny? So, and some people like to call them adpositions. An adposition, we'll finish with this. You might need to know this if you're ever on Jeopardy. An adposition is just it's an unbiased way of saying that a preposition or a postposition is put at a place with respect to the object. So adpositions can cover prepositions and postpositions. Okay, so because languages vary and linguists are trying to be as generic as they can, so sometimes they come up with these funny words. Okay, good. Let's take a look here at 7.3. 7.3. Our case for the chapter is accusative case. An accusative case is going to be used predominantly when we want to mark a noun as the object of the verb. Remember, in English, we use the objective case to do that, but our nouns, as a general rule, don't change their form for objective case, but if we had a pronoun, of course, that would be in the objective case. I know him. Him is the objective case versus he knows me, right? He is the subjective case there. Now, in Greek, we're going to use accusative case, not objective case. We'll use the term accusative. And the accusative case ending that we're going to see for singular nouns, by and large, is the new. All right? So what's wonderful about this is that this is true of all the genders in both the second and the first declension. So you only have to learn one case ending for the singular form. So that's a blessing. Okay? So look at our sentence here. Let me have you repeat after me. Pempe, apostolos, an apostolon. So here is apostolos, here is apostolon. They both mean apostle. In fact, with the article, they both mean the apostle. But which apostle, which apostolos form is the subject here? Yes, apostolos, because of the nominative case ending. Which one is the The direct object.
Pastelon.
Apostolon, because of the new accusative case ending. You see that there. So this will help us to know which is which. Doesn't matter what the word order is. So I could have had ha apostolos, pempe, ton apostolon, or even ton apostolon, pempe, ha apostolos. All right? So all of those would still say the same thing. Now, the case endings have been put into a chart here on 7.4. And notice that the new is present for the accusative singular in all genders and declension patterns that we know. New. Okay? And for the plural forms, it's sigma if it's masculine, sigma if it's feminine, but it's the alpha form if it's neuter. Okay? So interestingly, the new is going to be present for the nominative and the accusative singular, and the alpha will be present for the nominative and accusative plural for the second declension neuter forms. I did circle the iota here's accent mark because the accent mark really is not part of the case ending. Okay, he accidentally left that in there. So this is, here we are filling in the chart. We're going to fit in 2 more cases in between nominative and accusative. So as we get all the cases done, we're actually going to squeeze them in between the 2. Usually accusative is the last case in the chart. But he gives this to you, 1, because nominative and accusative are the most common, and 2, because they are the most similar to each other when we compare all the forms together. Okay? So let's take a look here at what it looks like when you have the noun's stem vowel. So this is still only part of what the whole word will look like, but remember, first and second declension nouns have a stem vowel to which the case ending is added. And when we add the case ending to just the stem vowel, you're going to see this part. So why don't you repeat after me? Os and on for the nominative and accusative masculine forms. A and ain, or if it's an alpha stem, a and on. So we keep the same vowel, just add these case endings. And then neuter on and on, the nominative and accusative. On the plural side, oi and us. Their feminine first declension, I and as. Now remember, whether your singular feminine noun is an eta stem or an alpha stem, doesn't matter. All of them always become alpha stem vowels in the plural. Okay? And then neuter, and Okay, so I'm gonna show you one thing that Mouse is not gonna really talk about this, at least not very much. There'll be a point where he makes a comment about it, but basically, you see here, what if I added to the feminine form to make it accusative plural? I've added a sigma, okay? And you usually associate S's in English with plurality, right? You take a noun, you add an S, it's plural. Well, look at what I have here. My accusative singular is on, ain, on, and on, right? If we just think about the masculine and the feminine forms, since we have to go to alpha for the feminine form, what this actually is the feminine singular accusative is on, feminine plural and accusative is actually this. It's on with an S added. Okay? Now, do you see the new in the form?
No.
No, you don't. Because there is a rule in Greek. And the rule in Greek is that news before sigma like to drop out. And so what you're left with is os. Okay? So os is the resulting form of on, the accusative singular, with an S at the end. New drops out, and I'm left with os. When that new drops out, the alpha is going to lengthen, and that lengthened alpha is compensating for the loss of the new. But long alphas look the same as short alphas, don't they? You can't tell the difference. Now, what happens over here with the accusative masculine form, that's singular. Let me give myself a little bit more room here. Is that form in the singular is on, right? Stem vowel, and then the singular new case ending. And to make it plural, I would just add a sigma, okay? But did you notice that you don't have a new in the accusative form here, do you? What's happened? The new has dropped out, and the omicron, is that long or short?
Short.
An omicron is short, right?
Oh, I see.
So when the nu is lost, the omicron is also going to compensatorily lengthen its vowel.
Mhm.
But what it's going to do here, and we're going to see this happen a lot in Greek, is instead of lengthening the omicron to an omega, the omicron will lengthen to a diphthong. Now, what did we say about diphthongs? Are diphthongs long or short vowel sounds? Diphthongs are always long. Diphthongs are long. And so us is really the result of adding a sigma to on, the nu falling out, and the omicron lengthening to the diphthong u, omicron upsilon, u, to compensate for it. Okay? So what I want to do is basically point to two things here as a result of this discussion. Number one, Greek is patterned. There's a certain sense of predictability in the pattern. Basically, the masculine and the feminine has a nu in the singular for their accusative case ending, and then you add an S for the plural to the accusative singular. But at the same time that there's patternness, there's also consonant changes that happen, because when consonant sounds come together, there are rules that a language applies that force some changes. And these sorts of changes look random at first because you don't know them. This is the first time you've seen it. But having learned right now that nus will drop out before sigma, you're going to be prepared, because when we get to the third declension forms, they're coming. Don't worry, they're coming. We're going to have lots of nus falling out before sigmas. Okay, so these consonant changes also follow a rather predictable pattern too. And I'm going to try to teach you those as we go along, so that you're not in the middle of Greek in the middle of this semester going, why does everything keep changing on me? It's all irregular. Well, it's not irregular. It's patterned chaos, okay? It seems chaotic, but it's patterned chaos. All right, so there you go. Now, let's just see how this looks when we add the rest of the noun to the noun stem vowel and the case ending. And again, we're using the same forms. So everybody, ha, logos. So these are nominative forms. He graphe. He hora. Ta ergon. With the accusative singular form, ton logon. Tain graphein. Tain horan. Ta ergon. Okay, so notice that you get the accusative article here, and it has a nu, doesn't it? And that nu matches the new case ending of logon. Isn't that beautiful? Tain graphein, you have the new case ending on tain, and the nu on graphein, and so forth.
That's the agreement you talk about.
Yes, yes. Remember, the article will agree with the noun it modifies in case, gender, and number. Okay, nominative plural, everyone. Hoi lagoi. Hai graphai. Ta erga. Okay, so the words, the writings, the works. And then tus logus. Tas graphas. Ta erga. So notice how our endings on these articles match. Oi, oi, I, ah, us, us, ah. Yes. Does that make you happy?
Yes.
Yes, it should.